Objective-C can at first seem like an intimidating language. You've got pointers, strange method syntax, and classes are even broken across multiple files. In this episode, we'll demystify some of the nuances of Objective-C and see how it's actually not that scary and is really a nice, simple language to use. What we've got here is a newly created class called Battleship. And the first thing you'll notice about this class is it's broken into two parts. There's a header file, which just defines our class's interface, and an implementation file, which handles our class's implementation. Now say we wanted to add a public method to our Battleship class called Fire. Since this is a public method, we would go to our .h file and define a method that looks something like this. Then for the implementation of that Fire command, we would come over to our .m file and add an implementation that would look something like this. But before we go too much further, let's go back to our header file and take a look at what we've done here. Now this is a pretty simple definition here of a method called Fire. We use a minus or plus sign to indicate whether we're going to have an instance or a class level method. In this case, it's instance. Void means we return nothing. And Fire is the name of our method. We're not passing any parameters here, so we just end our method definition with a semicolon. On the implementation side, we have that same method definition with no semicolon here. And then we add two parentheses like this. And this is where we would actually do the work of our Fire method in Objective-C. Now this is all well and good, but what if we wanted to add something a little more complex? For instance, what if we wanted a method that would describe us escorting a ship for our battleship? We could simply start typing it the same way we did our first method. We're not going to have it return anything. And then we could describe our method as escort. But something unique about Objective-C is here we add a little bit more information to the end of our first method definition describing the parameter we want to pass in. In this case, we're going to define or pass in a ship variable, and that would look something like this. So what we're saying here is we have a method name called escort ship, which takes a parameter of type ship with variable name ship. Now that's how we would pass in a single parameter to this method. But here's where Objective-C is really neat. If I wanted to pass in, say, another parameter, something about distance, I could add a little bit more of a method description here called @distance, and then pass in another variable, in this case double, and I'll make it kilometers. So what we have here now is a method name called escort ship @distance, which takes two variables, a class of type ship and something called a primitive of type double. Now you might be wondering why ship has a star here and this kilometer variable here described by double doesn't. There are two types of programming constructs we use when programming in Objective-C: primitives and objects. Primitives are really simple things like ints, floats, doubles. They aren't full-blown objects, but the advantage of them is they're really light and fast and, well, primitive, which means we can instantiate them quickly and throw them away when we're done with them. Pointers or objects, on the other hand, are a little more complicated. Objects get their memory dynamically allocated, and we just need to be a little bit more careful about how we access and store these in memory. Whenever you reference an object in Objective-C, you need a star. That's why ship has star. Primitives, on the other hand, don't. That's why double here is just double. Now you might be wondering what this red exclamation mark means here. Here, this line is telling us that this method actually doesn't know what ship is. So what we need to do is whenever we want to access another class's API, we import it at the top here, just like this. Now this method can make use of this ship object. Let's now take a look at one of Objective-C's core features for easily accessing data within objects, something called properties. Properties are like getters and setters for objects. For example, if we wanted to add a public property, actually I'm going to make this a private property, onto our ship class, we would do it with something like this. I've done a couple things here. One is this is how we define private methods and variables. If we want something private, we put it within the interface with our class name with parentheses in the implementation class. And this line here actually defines our property. It's ampersand property. Non-atomic means we're not going to do any blocking with the thread with regards to accessing this variable. It's a primitive type and its variable name is top speed. Now doing that effectively gives us something that looks like this. This property defines a getter and a setter for us, like these, and this synthesized line is what we needed to basically give our property an internal instance variable. Now properties have become so popular and so ubiquitous in Objective-C that with the latest version of Xcode we don't actually even need all these. With that one simple line up there, we get all of this. The only time you'd sometimes want to keep or write your own custom gets or sets is if you want to do some work in here. For instance, after setting some data, you may want to refresh a table. Or when someone comes to get your variable, you may want to send out a notification or something. But if we just have a simple property and all we want is a get and a set on our variable, we don't need these. And with the latest version of Xcode, we don't actually even need the synthesized line, which used to take our variable name and assign it a variable. This has become the convention now in Objective-C, so we don't even need this line, and we can just define our property with one line as shown above. Now accessing properties is really easy. Let's go back to our ship method here and actually add an implementation for our method that we defined here. Usually the simplest way to do this is just to copy that line, bring it down here, and then get rid of the semicolon and add some parentheses. Now the way to access properties, or in fact just send any message called to any method in Objective-C, is you basically send messages to the objects that you're requesting data from. So in this case, I should be able to send a message to ship asking for its data of top speed. Now this isn't working for us, and I suspect it's because when we defined the variable here for ship, we did it privately. So right now Battleship has no way of accessing this variable. I'm just going to throw this up here in the interface of ship, and that should now make it more public. So if I go back to Battleship now, that red dot hopefully disappears, and yes, I can now access my variable called top speed. Now, this is how you normally send messages and get data from objects. Message to receiver object. Properties, however, are a bit unique in that they're so popular, they actually support the dot notation you might be more familiar with. So if we created another variable called topspeed2, we could in fact go ship.topspeed, but we can only do that because top speed is a property on ship, and this is something just unique to properties. Then if we wanted to do something interesting with it, we could do something like this. Well, that was a very quick high-level introduction to Objective-C. Be sure to check the show notes, where I'll put some interesting links on some of the stuff we covered today. And good luck building your iPhone projects. Come back soon and we'll keep doing some interesting stuff with Objective-C. Take care. Bye-bye.